all this different type of stuff that I got to do, right? So I don't have that kind of window of time. Even if I get the mechanics, I don't have big blocks of time laying around. Here's the beauty of rapport building. Most uses of these procedures can be done in 15 seconds to 2-minute windows max. Okay, 15 seconds to 2-minute windows max. Rapport building is not finding a major event to sit down and have an hour conversation with this kid. First of all, he or she probably isn't going to tolerate it or let it happen. But secondly, you don't have that kind of time. Rapport building also is not mostly about following the kid to all his or her after-school activities. If for no other reason, you have a life, right? I would never discourage somebody from going to a kid's AYSO game or to high school basketball. I'm not saying that, but what I'm saying is if you bank on those being the primary opportunities to build rapport, they're too infrequent and they're too demanding on you to be able to sustain that regardless of the level of your good intent. What you need to do is you need to find what we call low-hanging fruit that you can pick because it's right in front of you and you can't avoid it because it's right there in front of you. So here's what I want you to think a little bit about right now. I want you to think for a minute about what are some typical types of situations or conditions in a typical school day with the kids you teach daily or the kids that teachers who you work with teach daily. What are examples of that low-hanging fruit? Remember, the windows of time we're looking for are 15-second to 2-minute blocks of time max, where there is not an instructional task or an instructional demand on the students. I'm not suggesting, okay, in the middle of while they're doing some type of academic task, you're going to interrupt them to have a conversation. That's counterproductive and it doesn't fit the condition or the context. What are what I call non-instructional times of the day that exist? Come up with some examples of those and then let's talk about them. Okay? I'll give you about a minute or so to think about them and a minute to talk, so I'll give you about 2 minutes tops here. Okay? So once you come up with some, share some with somebody. You can get up and move if you want to, that's fine. Okay? You've got about 2 minutes, you're on the clock. What's the low-hanging fruit in terms of opportunities?
Low-hanging fruit? What's your low question?
The morning that you're back in there unpacking, like switching classes, like recess.
Yeah, chit-chat. Yeah. I like that. I'm not really into this.
Simple times where you can just have a quick interaction with a kid. That's non-instructional in nature.
I agree with you, those transitional times. Yeah. Maybe cafeteria, going to maybe exclusive center.
About 1 more minute. Okay, 1 more minute here.
Yeah. To speak.
About 30 seconds more. Okay, 30 seconds more.
Yeah. I don't usually talk to you. They're like, oh, you're talking to me? Right. Time to talk right now. So what if there's not time to talk in this instructional time? No, we can't talk right now. We're doing this.
Okay, and time. So now, I should say, forgive me for interrupting you if you're in mid-statement there. Now, I know some of you, how many of you are elementary, primary elementary, right? How about middle school in here? High school? Okay, some high school. So, I mean, we're going to have different contexts in which we're looking for these pieces of low-hanging fruit. And in some cases, they might look exactly the same from a preschool to a kindergarten, to a 3rd grade, to a 5th grade, to an 8th grade, to a 12th grade. But in other situations, classic ones like recess, right? Well, there isn't recess in most high schools. They do have study hall, depending on how a school defines how study hall is used. But you have different age-appropriate types of expectations. But what are some examples of those little 15-minute, or 15-second, God forbid, 15 minutes, that wouldn't be doable, 15 seconds to 2 minutes max time opportunities where you can strategically be looking to connect with a particular kid and then put in place the mechanics to have a quick interaction with that kid in the hopes that he or she would have an interaction back with you. What are some examples, please?
Before school?
Okay, before classes start. So, like, you're in a high school, secondary, so you probably have homerooms of some sort or something like that?
No.
Okay, you don't? Okay.
In the hallways.
Okay, or catch them in the hallway. Or if you do have homerooms, you can use homerooms because there's usually, while there's expectations, they're not usually academic expectations. Unless a kid is really cramming to do homework he should have done the night before, that's a different story. How about other examples? Yes, please.
When we pack up in the afternoons.
Say again?
When they come to see you before they pack up.
Okay, when they come to see you before they pack up to leave your classroom and go to another classroom?
Or go home.
Or go home. So are you elementary? Okay, so so you have when they're kind of gathering up everything to get ready to either go to the bus or go to the pickup place or whatever it is, right? What's the opposite of that as well, related to it?
Well, first thing in the morning.
First thing in the morning when they're coming in and unpacking their stuff, right? Or depending on what your drop-off routine is, some schools where the teachers will come down and meet the kids, they'll be kind of hoarded into an area when they get off their bus rather than them trickling in. Other places just let the kids flow in. Again, you've got to kind of gauge what makes sense based on the environment you work within. But those are good examples. How about other examples? Please.
I eat lunch with kids. I'm the counselor.
Oh, okay. So you've got different opportunities.
3 kids at a time. And
Sure. So you have lunch opportunities as well. Sure. Other examples? Yep.
We're first grade. We take a bathroom break.
Okay. So some type of a break. What's the generic descriptor we could use for things like, yes, transitions, right? So let's really focus on transitions. Is there anybody in here that does not have naturally occurring transitions, even within the ebb and flow of when they're doing academic instruction? In other words, do you sometimes switch from individual work to pair work to group work? Mm-hmm. Those are transitions, right? Now, those transitions certainly aren't large blocks of time, because if they were, you'd have real management issues on your hands, right? Regardless of the age of the kids you're working with. You want to keep those transitions really tight, because you want to keep the flow of instruction going on, right? So looking for those naturally occurring transitions, little blocks of time, where kids are physically getting their materials together, getting up, regrouping, or whatever, where you can have that interaction. When they enter the classroom, when they exit the classroom, when they come to school, when they exit school, when they're transitioning to lunch or coming back from lunch. See, these are examples of what we call low-hanging fruit. They're there every single day. In fact, you almost have to avoid bumping into them. But the key is to know strategically how to use them. If you don't strategically target using some of those windows of time, not every single moment of the day, please don't miss or extend that. I'm not saying every moment of the day you're hovering around this kid. But if you don't think about strategically using some of those little windows of time, you're missing opportunities to put in a frequency of these kind of reaching out experiences to this kid. So what if you continue to reach out to a particular kid? You ask him about how his basketball team did, or maybe he's really into gaming, and maybe you sometimes, make up something like, hey, I've got to buy a holiday gift for my brother's little kid. He's really into gaming. I know nothing about it, but you do. Do you have any ideas? This kind of stuff. You come up with ways, right, to have conversations. So even if you persist at that, you're like, well, okay, but what if, like, after 6 or 7 or 8 or 12 or whatever the magic number is with a given kid's times, he still doesn't seem to be, or she still doesn't seem to be opening up yet? My response would be you persist. Because worst case in point, first of all, it's a 15-second to 2-minute non-instructional block of time. So it's not taking more time, it's just asking you to think about how to use some of that kind of low-hanging fruit of time. And secondly, what does that communicate to a kid? That you're willing to continue to come back, even though he or she may be persistently, within reason, shutting you down and not letting you in. What does that communicate? Yeah, you're worth pursuit. You're worth pursuit. And you know what? I'm persistent. You're worth pursuit, and I'm persistent. That's not a bad thing to communicate to kids that we're having trouble making connections with, because a lot of times those are kids that don't have anybody in their life right now that they can trust on. And that's how trust is earned. Okay? Trust will naturally happen with lots of kids on its own, and thank goodness it does, and I hope every single one of you for the rest of your careers, all of your kids fit into the favorites column. But we all know that's not real, and that's not going to happen. You're going to have kids that will not be the case with. So this is a way to think about rapport building, which we know is important, but to actually break it down into simple little strategies you can use. The strategies include, again, these mechanics. And with this one of asking open-ended questions, you need to have a sense of what to have an open question about, right? Otherwise you end up in a situation where you have somebody in mind to go have a conversation with, and you approach them, you get up here. This is called an awkward social movement, right? Nothing to say, no interaction going on. Okay, I might get away with that if we had a good rapport. You don't get a second chance to make a first impression with this stuff, right? So you're going to fumble, it's going to feel a little bit awkward, but the more organized you can be with knowing what the person is interested in or good at, having some open-ended questions already kind of in mind, then you're simply looking for those low pieces of hanging fruit, 15 seconds, 20 seconds, 10 seconds in some instances, where you just have a quick little interaction and then you move on. When you have the interaction, if he or she doesn't appear to want to have an interaction back, you simply say, hey, how is so-and-so and so-and-so? They don't respond, just move on. Don't say, hey, I asked you a question, because now all of a sudden this has become more of a coercive type of an interaction. What you're looking to do is you're looking to proactively give away, non-contingently, your time and attention. That's what rapport building is really based on. It's different than reinforcement procedures, because that's exclusively contingent based on student performance, academic or social behavioral. With rapport building, you're looking to strategically and proactively give your time away in little snippets of time with a particular kid that's on your radar screen who you know you need to start to get that kind of connection. And what will happen, I firmly believe, is over time, that kid will let you in. But he or she will let you in on their time, not on your time, right? So it's going to take your time, but they're going to kind of govern it based on when they feel they can trust you. So I can't think of a better message to send to a kid: you're worth pursuit and I'm persistent. Because that's how you earn trust. And there's a lot of kids, unfortunately, in our worlds today, we know, that need adults to do that. That's how rapport can start to emerge with those kids that are even the hardest to reach. Now, the second primary principle of practice here has to do with establishing clear behavioral expectations. Now, a number of you are working in school-wide PBS or school-wide PBIS schools already, right? So the practice is exactly the same as what you did school-wide, with only one difference. It's a smaller unit of analysis. That unit of analysis is your classroom. So if you already have, which I would imagine you do if you're in a school-wide PBIS school, 3 to 5 expectations identified, use the same 3 to 5. One mistake, it's amazing, one mistake I see people make is they come up with a different 3 to 5 in their classroom. Use the same 3 to 5. You're going to define them specific to your context. So you'll get the detail you need your kids to understand about your art classroom or your first grade classroom or the 10th grade biology classroom or whatever it might happen to be. But use the same 3 to 5. Now, if you're in a school that's not implementing school-wide in any formal sense, you obviously have a little bit more